What's going on, guys? Gamer Dude back once again, bringing you some more informative gaming news. But before we begin, y'all know the routine, or at least I hope you do by now. If you are new to the channel, please make sure you smash that like button and drop me a subscribe, because it would just be your good deed of the day. Same applies if you are a returning viewer. Now then, we are at, let's say, the end of a golden era, quite literally. It appears that E3 is no more. It's gone forever. And that's a real shame, because the first E3 was officially held way back in 1995. And honestly, I didn't even know this. I had to do some research into this, and I didn't even know when the first E3 was held. I thought it was in the early 2000s, but 1995? Damn, that's only a year after I was born. So E3 has been going for decades, and now they've finally just decided to cut ties and be done with it. And I mean, it's been a long time coming, I suppose. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, E3 had been cancelled, due to the pandemic. And it kind of killed it from then on, because other developers were pulling out of it here and there. I mean, the first one that I know of that pulled out of it was actually Nintendo back in 2013. Following that, Microsoft and EA pulled out to do their own events. Rockstar Games pulled out, and then Sony pulled out in 2019, which was the big showstopper, really. And most of them did pull out during the pandemic, but a lot of them pulled out before. And those that pulled out during the pandemic just did their own thing and continued to do their own thing. They thought, well, yeah, there's not really going to be much point in going back to E3 when we're now doing so well with our own thing. So they just kept doing their own thing. As for the ones that pulled out before, they just did their own thing anyway. So it stands to reason that E3 has been dead for a very long time, and now it is just officially dead. So yeah, the Entertainment Software Association has announced that the end of E3 is here for good. 28 years after the first event took place. I mean, like I said, 1995. 28 years. I had no idea it had been going that long. Like I said, I thought it started in the early 2000s, but 1995 was the first event, and that is a hell of a long time to keep going. But yeah, I mean, I can't exactly blame developers for doing their own thing now. It's easier just to promote your own stuff with your own sort of release windows and your own kind of big event plan, instead of going to a big crowd and waiting for everyone else's and being upstaged by everyone else's. So it makes a lot of sense. But anyway, in a statement shared on X and with the Washington Post, the ESA said it had decided to end the Electronic Entertainment Expo after more than 2 decades. They go on to say, after more than 2 decades of serving as a central showcase for the video game industry, ESA has decided to end E3. ESA remains focused on advocating for ESA member companies and the industry workforce who fuel positive cultural and economic impact every day. So I'm not too sure what this means for people's jobs when it comes to E3, because it's a yearly event. So do they just hire staff for this particular event for the year? Or are people actually going to lose jobs? I don't know. I didn't do that much research into it. I just looked up and was like, oh, E3 is dead. Okay, whatever. But anyway, in March, IGN reported that almost a year after announcing its return, the ESA had cancelled 2023's E3 at the time. The ESA said the 2023 version simply did not garner the sustained interest necessary to execute it in a way that would showcase the size, strength, and impact of our industry. It did, however, mention at the time the show would take place again in the future. So what this tells me is that, that they cancelled it this year because they thought to themselves, well, it's post-pandemic, developers are doing their own thing, and we can't really get anybody in on it, and we're just going to have maybe one or two companies show up, so there's not really much point. So they just thought, screw it, we'll cancel it and we'll bring it back next year with a big bang. And now they've realized, well, now everybody's doing their own thing, so there's literally no point bringing it back at all. And I think even if they had have brought it back, everything else that's ongoing would have upstaged it. Things like the Game Awards or Gamescom, things like that, it would have just been upstaged and totally just been made redundant, really. And that's what's happened to it. I think they've just decided, right, E3 is now redundant, we're just going to stop. But yeah, this year's event was supposed to be held from June 13th to 16th at the Los Angeles Convention Center, the show's home for many years, and would have been the first in-person E3 since the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, E3 was cancelled for those years due to the pandemic, and while a digital version was actually held in 2021, E3 was cancelled again in 2022 in an effort to focus on revitalizing the showcase. That would set a new standard for the hybrid industry events. But now we know this will never happen. Now, as I mentioned, E3's life began way back in 1995 with a show at the LACC, and stayed at the venue throughout its near 30-year existence, apart from a 2-year jaunt in Atlanta from 1997 to 1998. It became a synonymous event, with big video game announcements at flashy press conferences. And, it was the go-to event for games being announced. Even when the Game Awards came along, people would always still want E3 in the months to come, because the Game Awards, it was lackluster when it first came along. It didn't really show off that much. E3 was still the big go-to thing for big upcoming games and game reveal trailers. But yeah, historically, the likes of Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft would show up to E3 with on-stage reveals that would send shockwaves throughout the entire gaming community. Now, from Shigeru Miyamoto appearing on stage with Highland Shield and Master Sword during Nintendo's E3 2004 press conference to reveal Zelda Twilight, to Sony's generation-defining PS4 game-sharing announcement, E3 will always be remembered for its bombastic video game news. However, in more recent years, more video game companies have walked away from E3, as I said, just to do their own thing, have their own showcase. Even before the pandemic, Nintendo and Sony now use digital events such as Nintendo Direct and Sony's State of Play to announce most of their new products, leaving Microsoft one of the few video game companies that remains committed to making announcements at physical events. And, I'm not really much of an Xbox player, but you've got to admire Microsoft for that, because appearing in person, it allows fans to actually ask questions. You can do Q&As with fans. But doing digital stuff, it's just like, right, here's the event. We're going to talk for a little bit. Here's the reveals. We're going to talk for a little bit more. That's it. Sometimes they might respond to comments if it's live on YouTube or live on Facebook or something. Or they might respond to a few tweets here and there. But it's not the same as seeing them in person in a crowd. If you've ever been to one of these events, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Raising your hand and having the privilege of them answering your question. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Because if they read a comment from YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, you could have just copied and pasted some other dude's question and they're technically just reading that same question. Or you could have worded a question in a similar way to someone else and they're just answering the same question. But when you're live and in person at said event, you're not exactly just going to copy and paste the dude's question that went before you, are you? And that's what I'm saying. That's what's going to be missing from events like E3, with all these digital stuff out there now. But world's moving on. The world's going digital. So there's nothing more I can say on that, really. But yeah, in truth, the Game Awards has now become a de facto E3, so to speak, with each December show packed with the kind of video game announcements once reserved for an E3 press conference, alongside a smattering of awards for the games over the past year. Now, personally, I never attended an E3 event, because they were always held in the United States, in Los Angeles, and I just didn't have the money to get over there. I never had the money to get over there. I would have always wanted to go to one of these E3 events. I'm sure many other people would have wanted to that view my videos as well. But it just comes down to money. But if you are lucky enough to be one of my viewers and live in LA or near to LA, and you've actually been to E3 over the last few years, count yourself lucky. Tell your grandkids about it. Be like, I remember when I was in person for this. I remember when they did this in person, not on the internet. Just be like Grandpa Simpson vibes. But it is a crying shame. I mean, it's been a long time coming. It's been expected, given the pandemic and all these other developers doing their own thing, but it is a crying shame, because after Nintendo stopped doing their conferences at E3 in 2013 and opting to upload pre-recorded videos, other developers followed suit, and it was just a major gut punch, especially a major gut punch in 2019, as I said, when Sony decided to pull out of E3 altogether, and Sony was the icing on the cake for E3. And when they lost Sony, it was pretty much dead from there. And I'm not saying I don't like Sony's state of play. It just comes back to what I was saying earlier about the whole answering Q&As in person, instead of just reading comments. Because there's hundreds of thousands of people that tune into these live streams, and they can't read all of the comments and answer all of the questions. But when they're live and in person, they can be like, right, before the show, they talk how many questions they're going to answer. They're like, right, we'll answer the first 5 that put their hand up. We'll answer a couple from social media, and then we'll answer a couple more from the crowd. And they're just not going to do that anymore. It's just going to be, right, we'll read a couple of comments from Facebook, Twitter, etc., and then we'll be done. And I mean, most people these days, when it comes down to State of Play and Xbox Showcase and whatnot, they are only interested in seeing the gameplay footage, to be fair. I mean, being honest, when I was watching E3 when I was younger, the only thing I wanted to see was the gameplay reveals. I wasn't bothered about the Q&As or anything else in between. I was just like, right, what's new? What's coming? What do I and do I not want to play this year? And now I'm older, it's like, well, I'm kind of going to miss all of that. Because now I'm earning money, I can go places. It's like, well, maybe one day I would have wanted to actually go there. And now I can't, because it's never going to happen again. It's all going to be digital now. I mean, I suppose there's always the Game Awards, but there's 3 hours. 3 hours, just sitting down for 3 hours. And the crowd doesn't even get to do anything. The crowd just sits there doing nothing. And if you are lucky enough to get in the crowd, you might get lucky enough to meet a voice actor from one of your favorite games and say hi. But that's about it. You don't get to ask any questions about any of the new games coming. And it is a crying shame, but it has, of course, been a long time coming. But yeah, of course, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you think it's been a long time coming? Or do you think it's just sad? Do you think it's just sad that E3 is dead after 28 years after first starting in 1995? I mean, I still can't get over how long ago it started. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for future content from me. There's going to be a lot coming in the coming weeks. Christmas coming up, so I'm bound to get a couple of new games. I'm going to be live streaming the new God of War DLC, the Valhalla DLC. I'm going to continue my Hogwarts Legacy playthrough at some point, and yeah, just whatever else I get for Christmas. So stay tuned. You know, there's a lot coming. Obviously, GTA just got a new update as well, so I'm going to be doing that as well. But before we go, you know the routine, or at least I hope you do by now. If you are new to the channel, please make sure you smash that like button and drop me a subscribe, because it would just be your good deed of the day. Same applies if you are a returning viewer. So that being said then, this has been Gamer Dude. Happy gaming, and I will catch you all in the next one, guys.